What the scriptures actually say about the tithe. Introduction. Following this introduction, you may view every verse in the scriptures about the tithe. What the Old Testament actually says about the tithe. The only passage in Genesis refers to Abram, aka Abraham, and Melchizedek, which was before the law was given to Israel. All other verses about tithes in the Old Testament, from Leviticus through Malachi, are about Israel, while they were still under the Old Covenant. None of these verses about the tithe ever referred to money. What the New Testament actually says about the tithe. There are only 3 references to the tithe in the 4 Gospels. All 3 of them are directed as rebukes from Jesus to the Pharisees. The only reference to tithes in the New Testament letters/epistles is found in Hebrews chapter 7. This passage refers back to the one-time incident mentioned in Genesis. Abraham gave a tithe of the spoils, not money, from a battle that he fought and won. He gave it to Melchizedek, the king of Salem. Note: none of the scriptures in the Old or New Testament ever relate tithing to money. The beliefs that most people have about tithing are based on traditions, rather than on what the scriptures actually say. Those people have been programmed by emotions of obligation, guilt, and trusting leaders who teach traditions, instead of what the scriptures actually say, and peer pressure. Tithing with money is a tradition of men. Tithing was taught at early church councils, by the Council of Tours in 567. Jesus and his apostles never taught, or practiced tithing, anywhere in the New Testament. Tithing is a non-scriptural means of supporting the professionals of the clergy-laity system. This system was never taught, or practiced by Jesus and his apostles. Note: the following references include every verse in the Old and New Testaments about tithing. Genesis 14:20 And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Leviticus 27:30 And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. Leviticus 27:31 If a man wants at all to redeem any of his tithes, he shall add 1/5 to it. Leviticus 27:32 And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock, of whatever passes under the rod, the 10th one shall be holy to the Lord. Numbers 18:28. Thus you shall also offer a heave offering to the Lord from all your tithes which you receive from the children of Israel, and you shall give the Lord's heave offering from it to Aaron the priest. Deuteronomy 12:6. There you shall take your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the heave offerings of your hand, your vowed offerings, your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. Deuteronomy 12:11. Then there will be the place where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide. There you shall bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, the heave offerings. Deuteronomy 12:17. You may not eat within your gates the tithe of your grain or your new wine or your oil, of the firstborn of your herd or your flock, of any of your offerings which you vow, of your freewill offerings. Deuteronomy 14:22. You shall truly tithe all the increase of your grain that the field produces year by year. Deuteronomy 14:23. And you shall eat before the Lord your God, in the place where he chooses to make his name abide, the tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil, of the firstborn of your herds and your flocks. Deuteronomy 14:24. But if the journey is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe, or if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, when the Lord your God has blessed. Deuteronomy 14:28. At the end of every 3rd year you shall bring out the tithe of your produce of that year and store it up within your gates. Deuteronomy 26:12. When you have finished laying aside all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, so that they may Deuteronomy 26:13. Then you shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the holy tithe from my house, and also have given them to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all your commandments. 2 Chronicles 31:5. As soon as the commandment was circulated, the children of Israel brought in abundance the firstfruits of grain and wine, oil and honey, and of all the produce of the field, and they brought in abundantly. 2 Chronicles 31:6. And the children of Israel and Judah, who dwelt in the cities of Judah, brought the tithe of oxen and sheep, also the tithe of holy things which were consecrated to the Lord their God they laid in heaps. 2 Chronicles 31:12. Then they faithfully brought in the offerings, the tithes, and the dedicated things. Coconiah the Levite had charge of them, and Shimei his brother was the next. Nehemiah 10:37. To bring the firstfruits of our dough, our offerings, the fruit from all kinds of trees, the new wine and oil, to the priests, to the storerooms of the house of our God, and to bring the tithes of our, Nehemiah 10:38. And the priest, the descendant of Aaron, shall be with the Levites when the Levites receive tithes, and the Levites shall bring up a tenth of the tithes to the house of our God, to the rooms of the storehouse. Nehemiah 12:44. And at the same time some were appointed over the rooms of the storehouse for the offerings, the firstfruits, and the tithes, to gather into them from the fields of the cities the portions specified. Nehemiah 13:5. And he had prepared for him a large room, where previously they had stored the grain offerings, the frankincense, the articles, the tithes of grain, the new wine and oil, which were commanded to be given. Nehemiah 13:12. Then all Judah brought the tithe of the grain and the new wine and the oil to the storehouse. Come to Bethel and transgress, at Gilgal multiply transgression, bring your sacrifices every morning, your tithes every 3 days. Malachi 3:8. Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. Malachi 3:10. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such. Matthew 23:23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have. Luke 11:42. But woe to you Pharisees! For you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs, and pass by justice and the love of God. These you ought to have done, without leaving the others undone. Luke 18:11-14. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give tithes of all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other, for everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Hebrews 7:1-2. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all. Hebrews 7:5. And indeed those who are of the sons of Levi, who receive the priesthood, have a commandment to receive tithes from the people according to the law, that is, from their brethren, though they have come. Hebrews 7:6. But he whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. Hebrews 7:8. Here mortal men receive tithes, but there he receives them, of whom it is witness that he lives. Hebrews 7:9. Even Levi, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, so to speak. You have just read every verse in the Old and New Testaments about the tithe.